Jo found herself standing one day at the end of a dirt road leading up to an old farmhouse. The property looked like the setting of a Bluebell advertisement. 2-story, shuttered windows, wraparound porch, and white siding with peeling paint. It felt comfortable, welcoming, easy. And while Jo had never lived in a house like this, it felt very much like home. Jo began the walk up the dirt road to the house, climbed the steps to the porch, and approached the front door. The door itself was open, an old screen door covered the opening. Not wanting to barge in, she gently knocked on the frame. A woman's voice came from somewhere inside. "Be there in just a bit, hun. You can wait on the porch and have some lemonade if you like." Jo obliged and took a seat on the porch swing with a glass of lemonade, which had already been poured and set out on the wicker end table as if it were waiting just for her. Seconds or hours or days later, Jo really couldn't tell, the woman appeared in the doorway. She looked to be in her late 50s, with all the grace and style of a Southern woman. Her red hair was teased and sprayed to stand a good 3 inches above her scalp, and large brown glasses framed her eyes. "Come on in, child," she called. "Sure is good to see you." She wrapped Jo up in a bear hug, kissed her cheek, and invited her inside. Jo followed the woman down a hallway to the living room and took a seat on the sofa next to her, pulling her feet up under herself as she usually did at home. Remembering that she was not actually at her home and had never seen this woman before in her life, Jo spoke up. "I have to be honest, ma'am, I'm not entirely sure where I am or what I'm doing here." "Oh, honey, we've been so eagerly waiting for your homecoming. Miss Joanna Eversole, Jo, born in the flesh May 18th, 1983, born in the spirit June 17th, 1990, and died to the flesh June 13th, 2010, just now." Jo was utterly shocked. This woman knew everything about her, and that seemed to include a death date of which Jo was unaware until this moment. "So I'm dead." The woman nodded, in the earthly sense at least. "But as you can see, you're perfectly alive here," she said with a smile. A comforting hand landed on Jo's knee. "So this is heaven," Jo attempted to clarify. "Yes, and no, you're on the outskirts. New Jerusalem's about a mile walk back down the road. That's where your place is all fixed up for you. But yes, as far as you're concerned at the moment, this is heaven. Life beyond space and time." Jo took a moment to look around her. Picture frames covered every inch of wall space, and even more sat on end tables, shelves, windowsills, a coffee table, anything that would hold them. In each frame was a snapshot from Jo's short life. In each snapshot, Jo was beautiful, without a single visible flaw. Jo picked up the closest one, a picture of herself at an immigration reform rally. "Oh, that's one of my favorites. That day you made me so proud." Jo looked unconvinced. "This is one of your favorites? This is from the day I got arrested and thrown in jail for disorderly conduct." "Honey, Paul got thrown in jail, and from jail he wrote letters that ended up in the scriptures that led you to salvation through Christ Jesus. Jail is a creation of human beings. I didn't put you in jail, did I? Anyway, that day you stood up for people who needed help. You were doing the Lord's work, honey. You were building my kingdom." The woman picked up another photo, and another, and another. "See, baby girl, these aren't taken through human lenses, where people see flaws and judge you and tell you who you ought to be. These pictures are taken through the lens of God. This is how I see you." Despite her best efforts to hold them back, tears rolled down Jo's cheeks. The woman handed her a tissue. "Don't worry, darling, you can come by any time you want. I just got eternity hanging out here, you know." The woman winked and rose to her feet to hug Jo, then headed back toward the front door, with Jo following behind. "Now let's get you to your own place. I got the perfect little house down Pecan Street. Bed's all made up, even got your dog Bear waiting there for you." Jo smiled at the thought of seeing her old German Shepherd again. "You just take this road down to New Jerusalem, take a left at Bayfront Drive, then it's right onto Pecan Street. You'll know which one's yours." And with one last hug and kiss on the cheek, Jo started down the road, picture frame still in hand.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I realized I forgot a word, so it's actually 155. Sorry.
Well, that's what the limits are for, is so you can exceed them. The whole idea is to do better than what.
So that's the Bell caveat?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I never read that particular conception of heaven. I like it.
I like the lemonade.
It kind of comes from a song that I go to church at First Baptist on Thursday nights, and there's some song they sang once, and it had to do with in my Father's house. The picture frames contain pictures of me that are perfect, and there's no flaws, and
Nice.
so that's kind of where that came from.
I liked hearing the accent.
That's God. That's how I hear God.
Have you read The Shack?
No.
Has anybody else read The Shack?
I've heard of it.
you know, either heard of it or read it. No, that's a,
Yeah, it was handed out at First Baptist when we went for something
Yeah.
one time, and Carrie and I picked up a copy and read it. And it's got a certain popularity to it. It's not my favorite book, but it does have an image of God as a woman similar to the portrayal in Anna's story here. So I wondered if you had read that. Also reminded me of Pilgrim's Progress. You ever read Pilgrim's Progress?
Oh, don't be tempted.
Much friendlier than Pilgrim's Progress. But just the notion that
A lot more to the point, too.
that there's a that there's a geography
Yeah.
that you pass through the place, and you get to heaven, and there are streets laid out, and your home is right over there on the Con Street. That was very nice.
I have a question.
Mhm.
What is your title of the story? And I mean, again, it's not.
It's not Joe. Picture frames are in my mother's house. I'm not entirely sure. I just finished it last night.
Y'all have other thoughts or questions about the story?
So how did this story get started inside of this tiny frame? I mean, how did you decide that this story would fit inside of this tiny, constrained frame?
Well, in the beginning it didn't. and when I started out, it was going to be, because I had just told my dad, like the night before I started, that when I got to heaven, I hoped that I had access to all the knowledge in the world, and that's what I really wanted, was to read the scrolls from the Library of Alexandria, and that kind of. I want knowledge, and so it was going to be about Joe going to heaven and asking God for all the knowledge in the world, and I didn't know what was going to happen past that, but that was where it started. And so originally, this house belonged to St. Peter's, and then when I got to about 100 words, I was like, oh, she needs to meet God. Go back and change this. So I know, and then so I cut out. Well, I guess I had gotten to about 500 words, and I was like, there's no way I can finish this story. And so then I went back and changed it to God, and then imagined what God's house would look like, and so then it just kind of evolved from there.
So did it help you for it to be constrained? I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Was it a help, or was it a thing in the way?
Well, I think it was a help in that it challenged me, because I like words. I use a lot of them, and and so it was nice. It made me get to the point and not really mess around with descriptions and stuff. So it was kind of helpful in that it limited my stories and made me actually go straight down a path instead of winding around to get to the point.
Is there a way this conception of heaven affects your spiritual sense in this world?
I think it's the other way. I think this world affects a lot my perception of heaven. Like, I don't know. I guess I've always felt really at home with my dad's side of the family, and out in Beaumont, and that kind of country feeling. It feels like home, and it feels safe. And so I guess that's why my perception of heaven is so much like a country home that it feels very safe, like nothing too bad can happen to you.